Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel, if anyone sins inadvertently against any of the mitzvot of Adonai concerning these things which should not be done, if he does any of them, then if it is the atoned Kohen who sinned and thus brought guilt on the people, he is to offer Adonai a young bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin committed. He must bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before Adonai, lay his head on the bull's head, and slaughter the bull in the presence of Adonai. The anointed Kohen is to take some of the bull's blood and bring it to the tent of meeting. The Kohen is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times in the presence of Adonai in the front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The Kohen is to put some of the blood on the horns and the altar for fragrant incense before Adonai there in the tent of meeting. All the remaining blood of the bull is to pour out at the base of the altar for a burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to remove from the bull for the sin offering all of its fat, the fat covering the inner organs, all the fat above the inner organs, the 2 kidneys, the fat on them near the flanks, and the covering of the liver, which he will remove with the kidneys. As it is removed from the ox, a sacrifice as a peace offering, and the Kohen is to make these parts go up in smoke on the altar for a burnt offering. But the bull's hide and all its flesh, with its head, the lower parts of its legs, its inner organs, and dung, in other words, the entire bull, he is to bring outside the camp to a clean place where the ashes are emptied out. There he is to burn it on wood with fire there, where the ashes are emptied out. It is to be burned up. If the entire community of Israel inadvertently makes a mistake, with the assembly being unaware of the matter, and they do something against any of my mitzvot of Adonai concerning these things which ought not be done, they are guilty. When the sin they have committed becomes known, then the assembly is to offer a young bull as a sin offering and bring it before the tent of meeting. The leaders of the community are to lay their hands on the bull's head and slaughter the bull in the presence of Adonai. The atoned Kohen is to bring some of the bull's blood to the tent of meeting. The Kohen is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times in the presence of Adonai in front of the curtain. He is to put some of the blood on the horns of the altar before Adonai there in the tent of meeting. All the remaining blood he is to pour out at the base of the altar for a burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to remove all its fat and make it go up in smoke on the altar. This is what he is to do with the bull. He must do the same with the bull as he does with one for the sin offering. Thus the Kohen will make the atonement for them, and they will be forgiven. He is to bring the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull as a sin offering for the assembly. When the leader sins and inadvertently does something against any of the mitzvot of Adonai concerning the things which should not be done, he is guilty. If the sin which he committed becomes known to him, he is to bring as the offering a male goat without defect, lay his hand on the goat's head and slaughter it in the place where they slaughter the burnt offerings in the presence of Adonai. It is a sin offering. The Kohen is to take some of the blood of the sin offering and put his finger and put it on the horns of the altar for a burnt offering. Its remaining blood he is to pour out at the base of the altar for a burnt offering. All its fat he is to make go up in smoke on the altar like the fat of the sacrifice for peace offerings. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for him in regard to his sin, and he will be forgiven. If an individual among the people commits a sin inadvertently, doing something against any of the mitzvot of Adonai concerning things that should not be done, he is guilty. If the sin he committed becomes known to him, he is to bring an offering of female goat without defect for the sin he committed. Lay his hands on the head of the sin, lay his head of the sin offering and slaughter the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. The Kohen is to take some of its blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offering. All its remaining blood he is to pour out at the base of the altar. All its fat he is to remove, as the fat is removed from the sacrifice for peace offerings, and the Kohen is to make it go up in smoke on the altar as a fragrant aroma for Adonai. Thus, the Kohen is to make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. If he brings a lamb as his sin offering, he is to bring a female without defect. Lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it as a sin offering in the place where they slaughter burnt offerings. The Kohen is to take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offerings. All its remaining blood he is to pour out at the base of the altar. All its fat is to be removed, as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice for peace offerings, and the Kohen is to make it go up in smoke on the altar on top of the offerings for Adonai by fire. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for him in regard to his sin he committed, and he will be forgiven. If a person who is a witness sworn to testify sins by refusing to tell what he has seen or heard about the matter, he must bear the consequences. If a person touches something unclean, whether the carcass of an unclean animal, a domestic animal, or a reptile, he is guilty. Even though he may not be aware that he is unclean, if he touches some human uncleanliness, no matter what the source of his uncleanliness is, and he is unaware of it, then, when he learns of it, he is guilty. If someone allows to slip from his mouth an oath to do evil or to do good, he doesn't remember that he clearly spoke this oath, then, no matter what is it about, when he learns of it, he is guilty. A person guilty of any of these things is to confess in what manner he sinned and bring his guilt offering to Adonai for the sin he committed. It is to be a female from the flock, either a lamb or a goat, and as a sin offering, and the Kohen will make atonement for him in regard to his sin. If he can't afford a lamb, he has to bring as his guilt offering for the sin he committed 2 doves and 2 young pigeons for Adonai, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. He is to bring them to the Kohen, who will offer the one for a sin offering first. He is to wring its neck, but not remove the head. Sprinkle some of the blood as a sin offering on the side of the altar and drain out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. He is to prepare the second as a burnt offering in the manner prescribed. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for him in regard to the sin which he committed, and he will be forgiven. But if his means are insufficient, even for 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, then he is to bring an offering for the sin he committed, 2 quarts of fine flour for a sin offering. He is not to put any olive oil or frankincense on it, because it is a sin offering. He is to bring it to the Kohen, and the Kohen is to take a handful of it as a reminder portion, and make it go up in smoke on the altar on top of the offering for Adonai made by fire. It is a sin offering. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for him in regard to the sin he committed concerning any of these things, and he will be forgiven. The rest will belong to the Kohanim as with a grain offering. Adonai said to Moshe, if anyone acts improperly or inadvertently sins in regards to the holy things of Adonai, he is to bring his guilt offering for Adonai, a ram without defect from the flock or its equivalent in silver shekels, using the sanctuary shekel as a standard. According to your appraisal of its value, it is a guilt offering. In addition, he is to make restitution for whatever he did wrong in regard to the holy thing. Moreover, he is to add to that 1/5 and give it to the Kohen. Then the Kohen will make atonement with the ram, the guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. If someone sins by doing something against any of the mitzvot of Adonai concerning the things which should not be done, he is guilty, even if he is unaware of it, and he bears the consequences of his wrongdoing. He must bring a ram without defect from the flock, or its equivalent according to your appraisal, to the Kohen for a guilt offering. The Kohen will make atonement concerning the error which he committed, even though he was unaware of it, and he will be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He is certainly guilty before Adonai. Adonai said to Moshe, if someone sins and acts perversely against Adonai by dealing falsely with his neighbor in regard to a deposit or a security entrusted to him, by stealing from him, by extorting him, or by dealing falsely in regard to a lost object he has found, or by swearing to a lie. If a person commits any of these sins, then, if he sinned and is guilty, he is to restore whatever he stole or obtained by extortion, or whatever was deposited with him, or the lost object which he found, or anything about which he was sworn falsely. He is to restore it, and he was to restore it in full, plus an additional 1/5. He must return it to the person who owns it on the day when he presents his guilt offering. He is to bring as his guilt offering to Adonai a ram without defect from the flock, or its equivalent according to your appraisal to the Kohen. It is a guilt offering. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for him before Adonai, and he will be forgiven in regard to whatever he did that made him guilty. Adonai said to Moshe, "Give this order to Aaron and his sons. This is the law for the burnt offering, Olah. It is what goes up, Olah, on its firewood upon the altar all night long until morning. In this way the fire of the altar will be kept burning. When the fire has consumed the burnt offering on the altar, the Kohen, having put on his linen garments and covered himself with his linen shorts, he is to remove the ashes and put them beside the altar. Then he is to remove those garments and put on others before carrying the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. In this way, the fire of the altar shall be kept burning and not be allowed to go out. Each morning the Kohen is to kindle wood on it, arrange the burnt offerings, and make the fat of the peace offering to go up in smoke. Fire is to be kept burning on the altar continually. It is not to go out. This is the law for the grain offering. The sons of Aaron are to offer it before Adonai in front of the altar. He is to take from the grain offering a handful of its fine flour, some of its olive oil, and of the frankincense, which is on the grain offering, and he is to make this reminder portion of it go up in smoke on the altar as a fragrant aroma for Adonai. The rest of it Aaron and his sons are to eat. It is to be eaten without leaven in a holy place. They are to eat it in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It is not to be baked with leaven. I have given it as a portion of my offering made by fire, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. It is especially holy. Every male descendant of Aaron may eat of it. It is his to share of the offering for Adonai made by fire forever through all your generations. Whoever touches those offerings will become holy." Adonai said to Moshe, "This is the offering for Adonai that Aaron and his sons are to offer on the day he is atoned. 2 quarts of fine flour, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening as a grain offering from then on. It is to be well mixed with olive oil and fried on a griddle. Then bring it in, break it in pieces, and offer the grain offering as a fragrant aroma for Adonai. The atoned Kohen who will take Aaron's place from among his descendants will offer it. It is a perpetual obligation. It must be entirely made to go up in smoke for Adonai. Every grain offering to the Kohen is to be entirely made up and go up in smoke. It is not to be eaten." Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell Aaron and his sons that this is the law for the sin offering. The sin offering is to be slaughtered before Adonai in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. It is especially holy. The Kohen who offers it for sin is to eat it. It is to be eaten in a holy place, in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Whoever touches the flesh will become holy. If any of its blood splashes on any item of clothing, you are to wash it in a holy place. The clay pot in which it is cooked must be broken. If it is cooked in a bronze pot, it must be scourged and rinsed with water. Any male from a family of Kohanim may eat the sin offering, it is especially holy. But no sin offering which has had any of its blood brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place is to be eaten. It is to be burned up completely.